The wind howled like a pack of wolves, rattling the shutters of Jack's small, run-down house on the edge of town. It was the kind of night that made shadows dance in the corners and every creak of the floorboards echo like a warning. Jack had lived alone for years, and solitude had its price. The whispers of his own mind haunted him, and lately they had grown louder, more insistent. Jack was a struggling artist, a once promising talent whose paintings now gathered dust in the corner of his studio. The passion that had once fueled him had been extinguished by a relentless tide of rejection and despair. He sat in front of a blank canvas, brushes and paints untouched, staring into the void of his failure. "Maybe I need a miracle," he muttered to himself, pouring another glass of cheap whiskey. He took a long swig, feeling the burn slide down his throat. He set the glass down and rubbed his tired eyes. The night dragged on, each tick of the clock mocking his inability to create. That's when it happened. The shadows in the room seemed to shift, gathering in the corner near the old, dusty mirror that had belonged to his grandmother. He squinted, convinced he was just seeing things after too many drinks. But then, the shadows took form. A figure emerged, cloaked in darkness, with eyes that burned like embers. Jack's heart raced. He felt an icy grip on his chest, but there was something oddly compelling about the figure. It exuded a power he couldn't explain, a promise of something more than the mundane life he led. "Jack," the figure spoke, its voice a low rumble that sent shivers down his spine. "I know what you seek. You desire success, fame, immortality in your art. Who are you?" Jack's voice trembled, and he felt the urge to flee, yet he was rooted in place, captivated. "I am the one who can grant you what you desire. All I ask in return is a small price." Jack's mind raced. He knew he should be afraid, that deals like this always ended badly, but desperation gnawed at him, a hunger that demanded to be fed. "What's the price?" The figure smiled, revealing teeth like jagged shards of glass. "Not much, just a fragment of your soul, a piece so small you'll hardly notice its absence." Jack hesitated, weighing his options. What did a fragment of his soul matter against the promise of his dreams? He had nothing to lose, nothing left to give. I'll do it," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "Very well," the figure replied, extending a skeletal hand. "Then we have a deal." As their hands touched, Jack felt a jolt of electricity surge through him, burning like fire. The world around him twisted, the walls of his studio melting into darkness. He gasped, the sensation overwhelming him. When the darkness receded, Jack found himself back in his studio, the canvas now alive with color. The brush moved effortlessly in his hand, strokes flowing like a river of creativity. He painted with a fervor he hadn't felt in years, images bursting forth like a dam breaking free. The clock struck midnight as he finished the painting, a vibrant portrayal of his own torment, a masterpiece. Jack stood back, breathless. He had done it. He had created something magnificent. But as he stared at his work, a flicker of doubt crept in. The price he'd paid. What had he lost? The next morning, Jack awoke to the soft light filtering through the window, illuminating the masterpiece that hung on the wall. The painting glowed with an otherworldly radiance, and he couldn't help but smile. It was the first time in years he felt proud of his work. Word spread quickly through the art community. The local gallery invited him for an exhibition, and within days, his name was on everyone's lips. Where did he come from? They whispered. How did he create such a masterpiece? Jack reveled in the attention, the accolades pouring in. He felt alive again, each compliment feeding a hunger he didn't know he had. But as the weeks passed, he noticed something odd. At night, he found it increasingly difficult to sleep. Shadows danced at the edges of his vision, whispering his name. In his dreams, he could feel the figure lurking, always watching, always waiting. He dismissed it as stress, the burden of newfound fame weighing heavily on him. But the nightmares grew more vivid, more insistent. He dreamed of dark landscapes where the sun never rose, where twisted figures clawed at him, begging for release. Each time he woke, he felt more exhausted, more drained, as if his very essence was being siphoned away. One evening, after a successful gallery opening where his paintings sold for thousands, he decided to celebrate. He hitched a ride to the local bar, laughter and music filling the air, but as he sipped his drink, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. "Jack, you're a legend now," a fellow artist shouted, raising a glass, "to your genius." Jack raised his glass, forcing a smile, but his heart wasn't in it. The shadows were growing darker, more insistent. "Yeah, cheers," he muttered, but the cheers of the crowd felt distant, echoing in a void. As the night wore on, he stepped outside for fresh air, the chill of the evening nipping at his skin. The streetlights flickered, and he felt the darkness creeping closer. "Jack," a voice slithered through the air, the same low rumble that had haunted him since the night of the deal. "Do you enjoy your success?" Jack turned to see the figure standing in the shadows, its eyes glinting like stars against the night sky. "What do you want?" he demanded, anger rising in him. "I thought we had a deal." "We do," the figure replied, stepping forward, and the night seemed to darken around it. "But remember, every gift has its cost." "I paid my price," Jack spat. "What more do you want from me?" The figure smiled, a predatory grin that made Jack's skin crawl. "You think you paid the price. The fragment of your soul you surrendered was merely the beginning. Your success comes at a cost far greater than you can comprehend." Jack shook his head, fear gripping him. "I won't give you anything else." "Ah, but you already have," the figure said, its voice dripping with amusement. "Each night you paint, you surrender a little more of yourself. Your soul is slipping away, Jack, and soon you will understand the true meaning of regret." As the figure melted back into the shadows, Jack felt the weight of dread settle in his chest. He had made a terrible mistake, and now he could see the cracks in his newfound success, the darkness that threatened to consume him. Days turned into weeks, and Jack's fame only grew. Art critics hailed him as a genius, and collectors clamored to own a piece of his work. But as his popularity skyrocketed, so did his nightmares. Each night was a new torment, a descent into madness that left him breathless and terrified. The paintings he created now felt different, darker, twisted. They spoke of pain and suffering, filled with shadows that seemed to breathe. Every stroke of the brush felt like a part of him being ripped away, but he couldn't stop. The drive to create was insatiable, consuming him whole. One evening, while painting, Jack caught a glimpse of his reflection in the mirror. The man staring back at him looked gaunt, eyes sunken, haunted. It was as if he had aged years in mere months. He recoiled, heart racing, and slammed his eyes shut, willing the reflection away. He turned back to his canvas, desperate to escape the horror of his reality. He painted furiously, each stroke a cathartic release. But as he worked, he felt the familiar presence lurking in the shadows, growing closer with each passing moment. "Jack," the voice purred, curling around him like smoke. "Your talent is magnificent, but have you considered what you've sacrificed for it?" "Enough," Jack shouted, tossing his brush aside. "I don't want to hear your lies anymore." The figure materialized before him, its eyes glowing with a predatory intensity. "You cannot escape the truth, Jack. You have become a vessel for my power, and every masterpiece you create steals another piece of your soul." Jack's heart pounded in his chest. "You said it was just a fragment." And so it was. But as your success grows, so does your hunger for more. The longer you create, the more I claim. Panic surged through him, and Jack staggered back, desperate to break the connection. "I can stop. I don't need this anymore." The figure laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "But you do need it. You've tasted fame, and now you crave it like a drug. You cannot resist the urge to paint, to express your tortured soul." Jack felt the walls closing in around him, the shadows swallowing him whole. "What do you want from me?" "Only what is owed, dear Jack," the figure replied. "A complete surrender. The soul is a powerful thing, and soon it will belong to me entirely." The realization crashed over Jack like a tidal wave. He had thought he was in control, that his success was a gift. But now he understood the truth. He was a puppet, and the devil was pulling the strings. Determined to break free, Jack turned to the one person he could trust, his childhood friend, Emily. She had always believed in his talent, even when he had lost faith in himself. He reached out to her, desperation lacing his voice. "Emily, I need your help," he confessed, his hands trembling as he spoke. "I made a deal, and it's consuming me. I can't escape it." "What do you mean?" she asked, concern etching her features. "You're the hottest artist in town. You're living your dream." Jack's eyes darkened and he lowered his voice. "It's not what you think. I made a deal with the devil, and now I'm losing myself. I see shadows everywhere, hear whispers. I can't take it anymore." Emily frowned and Jack could see the doubt flickering in her eyes. "You've been under a lot of stress, Jack. Maybe you need a break. Get away from the canvas for a while." "No, I can't. The longer I'm away, the more I feel it clawing at me. I need to confront it." Okay, she said, softening. "What do you want me to do?" "I don't know. Just be here with me. I need someone to keep me grounded." That night, Emily stayed over. They shared old stories, reminiscing about happier times. Jack felt a flicker of hope, the warmth of friendship momentarily warding off the shadows. But as the clock struck midnight, the darkness returned, creeping back into his mind. He awoke to find Emily asleep on the couch, and he quietly wandered to his studio, compelled by an unseen force. The canvas called to him, begging to be filled. As he picked up the brush, he could feel the figure lurking just behind him, a cold breath against his neck. "Are you ready to give in, Jack?" It hissed and he shuddered, squeezing his eyes shut. "No," he shouted, frustration boiling over. "I won't let you take me." With a surge of anger, he began to paint, but instead of creating, he started to destroy. He slashed at the canvas, tearing it apart, paint flying everywhere. The figure shrieked in rage, its form twisting and contorting as Jack fought back against the darkness. But the more he fought, the more powerful the presence became. Jack felt himself being pulled into a void, caught between his desperation and the lure of the devil's promise. "Stop fighting, Jack," the figure taunted, circling him like a predator. "You cannot escape what you've become. You are mine." In that moment, Jack realized he was not just fighting for himself. He was fighting for his very soul. He had to resist, to find a way to break free from the chains binding him to this darkness. The following morning, Jack was a shell of himself. He had spent the night wrestling with the darkness, and though he had emerged physically unscathed, the toll on his mind was evident. He could barely remember the faces of those who had supported him, or the reasons he had wanted to be an artist in the first place. Emily found him staring blankly at a new canvas, a paintbrush in hand but no will to use it. "Jack, you look terrible," she said, concern etched on her features. "We need to talk about this. You're not yourself anymore." He turned to her, eyes sunken and wild. "I know, but I don't know how to stop it. The more I create, the more I lose. I feel like I'm disappearing." "Then let's find a way to get you back. Maybe there's a way to break the deal. Have you tried researching it? There are old tales and legends about people who've faced the devil and come out on the other side." Jack's heart raced at the thought. "You think that's possible?" "Maybe. We need to look for answers. I'll help you." They spent the next few days digging through old books, folklore, and occult texts. Jack's studio transformed into a makeshift research hub, filled with scattered pages and ancient tomes. Emily kept him grounded, reminding him of the artist he used to be and encouraging him to remember why he loved to paint in the first place. One evening, they stumbled upon a legend about a ritual that could potentially break a pact with the devil. It required a specific series of items: a lock of hair, a drop of blood, and the ashes of something once cherished. Jack's heart sank at the last requirement. He didn't know if he could part with any of his art. As they read further, Emily grew increasingly skeptical. "Are you sure about this? It sounds risky, and what if it doesn't work?" Jack bit his lip, uncertainty gnawing at him. "What choice do I have? I can't keep living like this. I can't keep losing myself. I'll gather what I need." Determined, Jack set to work gathering the items needed for the ritual. The lock of hair was easy. He clipped a few strands from his own head, placing them in a small vial. The drop of blood was more difficult. He pricked his finger with a needle, watching as the crimson bead formed and dripped into another vial. But the ashes posed a challenge. He stood in front of his most recent painting, one that had become a symbol of his torment, and wrestled with the decision. It was a beautiful piece, filled with chaos and beauty, but it had also taken so much from him. With a heavy heart, Jack took a lighter to the canvas. Flames danced hungrily, devouring the image he had created. As the smoke filled the room, he felt a part of himself wither away, but he knew it was necessary. "Jack, are you sure about this?" Emily asked, concern lacing her voice as she watched the painting burn. "You're destroying your art." "It's a sacrifice I have to make," he replied, voice thick with emotion. "This is the only way I can reclaim myself." Once he had gathered all the items, they prepared for the ritual in the studio, the air thick with tension. They lit candles and arranged the items in a circle, chanting the incantations they had memorized. Jack's heart raced, and he felt the energy in the room shift, a palpable force gathering around them. As they chanted, shadows began to swirl, flickering at the edges of their vision. The temperature dropped, and Jack felt the familiar presence of the devil creeping back into the room. "What are you doing, Jack?" the figure hissed, its voice like ice. "You think you can break our bond?" "I'm taking back what's mine," Jack shouted, his voice steady, though fear trembled in his chest. The shadows coalesced, forming the figure before him, eyes blazing with fury. "You cannot escape me. I made you a promise, and you willingly accepted my gift." With each word, the shadows grew thicker, enveloping Jack and Emily in darkness. But they pressed on, their voices rising above the cacophony of despair. "Release me," Jack cried, pouring every ounce of his will into the incantation. The shadows screamed, twisting and writhing as the room shook. The candles flickered, and Jack felt a surge of energy pulse through him. "I refuse to be yours any longer." With a final, defiant shout, Jack thrust the vial of blood into the circle, the ashes igniting into a blinding light. The shadows recoiled, howling in rage, and the figure screamed as the light consumed it, forcing it back into the void from which it came. The room fell silent, the shadows dissipating into nothingness. Jack collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. Emily knelt beside him, worry etched across her face. "Did it work?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I think so," Jack panted, feeling a weight lift from his chest. But as he looked around, he realized the price of his freedom. The studio was in shambles, the remnants of his art scattered like ashes in the wind. Days passed, and Jack slowly began to feel more like himself again. The darkness that had consumed him was gone, but the scars remained. His studio felt emptier, the absence of his art like a void in his heart. Emily stayed by his side, helping him clean up the remnants of the ritual. "You know, you can start over," she said gently, encouraging him to see the potential for new beginnings. "You have your freedom back. Use it." Jack nodded, but the weight of his lost creations weighed heavily on him. Each brushstroke had held a piece of his soul, and now they were gone. He had sacrificed his art for his freedom, and the regret lingered like smoke in the air. One afternoon, he stood in front of the empty canvas, staring into the abyss of white. He felt a flicker of inspiration, a spark igniting within him. The shadows of the past began to fade, replaced by a determination to create anew. With each stroke of the brush, Jack poured his heart into the canvas, the colors blending and swirling in a dance of emotion. It was different now, a reflection of his journey through darkness and back into the light. As he painted, he felt a sense of liberation washing over him. The art became a cathartic release, a way to reclaim his identity. He no longer painted for fame or success, but for the sheer joy of creation. But late at night, as he lay in bed, the echoes of the devil's laughter still haunted him. He had escaped, but at what cost? Months later, the local art scene buzzed with excitement. Jack was invited to showcase his new work at a prestigious gallery. He felt a mixture of anxiety and anticipation, his heart pounding as he prepared for the event. "Just be yourself," Emily reassured him, her encouragement lighting a spark of confidence within him. "This is your chance to show the world who you really are." As he arrived at the gallery, he was greeted by familiar faces. The room was filled with vibrant colors, and Jack felt a rush of pride as he unveiled his new pieces. They spoke of hope, resilience, and the beauty that emerged from darkness. But as the night wore on, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He glanced around, half expecting to see the figure lurking in the shadows. The whispers of doubt crawled back into his mind, and he tried to push them away. In the midst of the crowd, he spotted a stranger standing in the corner, observing him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. The figure was cloaked in darkness, its eyes gleaming like embers. Jack's heart sank and panic surged within him. "Do you see, Jack?" The figure hissed, its voice dripping with malice. "You cannot escape me. You think you can create without consequence." "Leave me alone," Jack shouted, forcing himself to maintain composure. The gallery fell silent, all eyes on him. "You think you've broken our bond, but the truth is, I am forever a part of you," the figure continued, stepping closer. "Every stroke of your brush draws me nearer. You belong to me." The crowd gasped, whispers filling the air as Jack struggled to regain his composure. "I won't give in to you," he shouted, anger surging through him. "Then let's make a deal," the figure proposed, its voice smooth like silk. "You can keep your success, your fame, but I will take what is owed, everything you have created since our pact." Jack felt the world tilt beneath him. "No, you can't take my art." "Watch me," the figure sneered. In an instant the paintings began to twist and warp, colors bleeding into darkness. Gasps echoed around him as the art transformed into grotesque reflections of his deepest fears and regrets. "No," Jack cried, lunging towards the nearest painting, desperate to stop the transformation. But it was too late. The art disintegrated into ash, leaving only despair in its wake. The gallery erupted into chaos as patrons backed away, horror etched on their faces. Jack felt the weight of despair crash down upon him. "What do you want from me?" he shouted, desperation lacing his voice. "Only what is owed, Jack," the figure replied, its voice cold and unyielding. "Your art was born from darkness, and it will return to me." Jack's heart raced, and he felt a familiar sensation creeping into his mind. He had fought against this darkness, but now it threatened to consume him once more. He glanced at Emily, who was staring at him, eyes wide with fear. "Jack, fight it," she urged, desperation spilling from her voice. "You have the strength to overcome this." He felt the darkness closing in, but in that moment, something shifted within him. He remembered the pain, the struggle, the fight to reclaim his soul. He had faced the darkness before and emerged victorious. He could do it again. "I won't let you take me," Jack declared, feeling the fire of determination rise within him. "I refuse to give in to your darkness." The figure laughed, a sound that echoed through the gallery. "You think you have the power to resist. You are nothing without your art." But Jack felt a surge of defiance. "No, I am more than what you've taken. I am my experiences, my pain, my triumphs. I will create again." With every ounce of strength he reached for the remnants of his paintings. He could feel the darkness pulling at him, but he pushed back, summoning the memories of his journey, the struggles, the sacrifices, the moments of joy. As he focused on those memories, the shadows began to dissolve, the figure's form flickering like a dying flame. "You cannot win, Jack," it howled, but Jack felt the light within him growing stronger. "I am not yours to control," he shouted, channeling his energy into a brilliant burst of color that surged forth from his heart. The light exploded, engulfing the gallery in a blinding brilliance. The figure howled in rage as it was consumed, the shadows dissipating into nothingness. When the light faded, Jack found himself standing alone in the gallery. The paintings were intact, their colors vibrant and alive. The crowd was silent, staring at him in awe. Jack felt the weight lift from his chest, the darkness vanquished. He had fought the devil and reclaimed his soul, and in doing so, he had found himself anew. As applause erupted around him, he glanced at Emily, who rushed forward, tears of relief streaming down her face. "You did it, Jack. You faced the darkness and won." He nodded, a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration washing over him. "I had to fight for my soul, for my art. I can't let fear control me anymore." From that day forward, Jack's art took on a new life. He painted with a passion that resonated deeply, pouring his heart into each stroke. His work reflected not only his journey through darkness, but also the light that emerged from it. He had learned that while the shadows may linger, they did not define him. He would continue to create, to grow, and to explore the depths of his own soul, free from the chains that once bound him. and though the echoes of the past would occasionally return, Jack was ready to face them, armed with the knowledge that he had the strength to overcome anything that threatened to consume him again. With each new exhibition, Jack's reputation soared. Critics praised his work and collectors clamored to acquire his pieces. But as the accolades piled up, Jack began to feel the shadows creeping back into his life. His newfound success had brought a wealth of opportunities, but it also brought a relentless pressure to perform. The whispers of doubt that had plagued him before started to return, slithering through his thoughts when he was least prepared. One evening, as he prepared for yet another gallery opening, he found himself standing in front of the mirror, his reflection almost unrecognizable. Dark circles had settled under his eyes, and the spark of joy he had once felt while creating had dimmed. "Jack," Emily's voice broke through the fog, pulling him from his thoughts. She stepped into the room, her eyes scanning him with concern. "Are you okay? You look tired." "Just a bit of pressure," he admitted, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You know how it is. The more successful I get, the harder it becomes." Emily frowned, crossing her arms. "You can't keep pushing yourself like this. You fought so hard to be free from the darkness. Don't let the pressure bring you back down." "I know," Jack replied, rubbing the back of his neck. "But every time I sit down to paint, I feel this weight pressing down on me. It's like the devil is watching, waiting for me to falter." "Then don't give him that power," she said firmly. "You're not the same person who made that deal. You've grown. You've changed." Jack nodded, but doubt still gnawed at him. That night, as he lay in bed, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. He tossed and turned, the shadows whispering just beyond his consciousness. A week later, Jack received an unexpected visit from an old acquaintance, Marcus, a fellow artist from his past. They had once been close friends, but the rift had widened after Jack's success began to eclipse Marcus's own career. "Jack, it's been too long," Marcus exclaimed, a wide grin plastered on his face, but Jack could see the glint of envy lurking behind the smile. "Yeah, it has," Jack replied, forcing a smile. "What brings you by?" "I wanted to congratulate you on your latest work. Everyone is talking about you, and I thought it was time we caught up," Marcus said, his voice tinged with a forced enthusiasm. Jack nodded, unsure of how to navigate the conversation. "Thanks, it means a lot. I've been trying to focus on creating art that really resonates with people." Marcus's expression darkened for a moment before he regained his composure. "You've done well for yourself. But it must be hard, right? Keeping up that level of success." Jack felt a cold chill run down his spine. "It can be," he admitted cautiously. "Maybe we could collaborate on something," Marcus suggested, a glint of ambition in his eyes. "I've got some ideas that might spark inspiration for both of us." Jack hesitated. "I'm not sure. I'm trying to stick to my own vision right now." "Come on, it'll be fun," Marcus insisted, his excitement seeming too forced. "Think of the buzz it would create. We could make something truly unforgettable." Against his better judgment, Jack agreed to meet with Marcus to discuss potential collaboration. He felt a mixture of curiosity and trepidation, wondering if this partnership would reignite his creativity or pull him back into the shadows he had fought so hard to escape. Their first meeting took place in Jack's studio, a space filled with the remnants of his recent works. Vibrant colors splashed across the walls, canvases standing like sentinels of his journey. As Marcus arrived, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew heavy with unspoken tension. "Wow, it's amazing in here," Marcus said, his eyes darting around, taking in the artwork. "You've really made a name for yourself." "Thanks. So, what were you thinking for this collaboration?" Jack asked, trying to keep the conversation focused. "I was thinking we could create a series of pieces that explore the concept of darkness and light," Marcus said, enthusiasm bubbling beneath the surface. "Something that dives into the depths of the soul and examines the struggles we face as artists." Jack's heart raced. It sounded eerily similar to the turmoil he had just emerged from, and he felt a flicker of unease. "That's an interesting idea, but I've already dealt with those themes in my own work." "Sure, but think about it. You could tap into those feelings again, really push the boundaries of your creativity. It might even inspire you," Marcus urged, leaning in closer, his intensity palpable. Jack frowned, feeling the shadows whisper in the corners of his mind. "I'm not sure if revisiting those themes is a good idea. I've worked hard to move past that." "Don't you miss it? The raw emotion, the pain. It's what makes art powerful," Marcus pressed, his voice dripping with an almost manic excitement. Jack's heart raced as he considered the implications of this collaboration. "I need to think about it," he finally replied, trying to deflect the pressure. As Marcus left, Jack felt a knot of anxiety tighten in his chest. The shadows stirred, whispering doubts that clawed at his mind. Could he truly create without succumbing to the darkness? In the days that followed, Jack found himself unable to focus on his art. Marcus's proposition hung over him like a storm cloud, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being drawn back into a familiar darkness. He tried to push the thoughts away, burying himself in new projects, but the pressure continued to build. The more he avoided Marcus, the more insistent the shadows became. He began experiencing nightmares again, visions of the devil looming in the corners of his mind, beckoning him to return. One evening, he received a phone call from Marcus, his voice crackling with excitement. "Jack, I've been thinking about our project. I really think we should get started. There's so much potential here." Jack hesitated, but before he could respond, Marcus continued. "We can do something incredible together. Just think of the impact. This could change everything." Finally, Jack found himself agreeing to meet again, feeling as if he had no other choice. The pressure to create, to perform, was mounting, and he worried that he might lose everything he had built if he didn't give in. When they met, Marcus presented Jack with a series of sketches that felt dark and foreboding. "These are just initial ideas, but I think we can really dig into the concept of internal struggle, push the boundaries," he urged. Jack stared at the sketches, a sense of dread washing over him. "These feel intense. Are you sure this is the direction we want to go?" "Absolutely," Marcus replied, a wild gleam in his eyes. "This is the art world we're in. We have to shock people, make them feel something." But as Jack looked at the sketches, he felt a flicker of fear deep within him. "I don't want to revisit that darkness," he said quietly, but Marcus shook his head dismissively. "You're an artist, Jack. Embrace it. You have to explore every aspect of yourself, even the painful parts." As the days turned into weeks, Jack found himself swept up in Marcus's vision, feeling both exhilarated and terrified. They began to work side by side, creating pieces that blurred the line between beauty and horror. Jack poured himself into the work, but each stroke of the brush felt like a descent into madness. He began to lose track of time, the days blurring together as he became consumed by the project. At night, the shadows returned with a vengeance, whispering to him, reminding him of the deal he had made, the darkness he had tried to escape. They would taunt him, whispering about his fears, and Jack found himself plagued by doubts about his worth as an artist. Maybe Marcus is right, he thought one evening as he stared at a nearly completed painting, a dark, twisted landscape that mirrored his internal chaos. Maybe I do need to embrace the darkness. But with each passing day, Jack felt a piece of himself slipping away. The excitement of collaboration with Marcus began to morph into anxiety and dread. He started to see glimpses of the figure in the shadows, lurking just beyond the edges of his vision. One night, while working late in the studio, he felt an overwhelming sense of despair wash over him. The walls felt like they were closing in, and he struggled to breathe. "Jack," Marcus called out, breaking through the suffocating atmosphere. "Come on, we need to finish this piece. This is going to be incredible." Jack turned to face him, desperation spilling from his lips. "Marcus, I can't keep doing this. I feel like I'm losing myself again." But Marcus's eyes glinted with a manic light. "You can't back down now. We're on the brink of something monumental." In that moment, Jack realized the truth. He had let himself be swept away by the darkness, and he was in danger of losing everything.